Hello, everyone. Today I'm bringing you a discussion on the book The Great Leveler, Violence and the History of Inequality from the Stone Age to the 21st Century. The author is Walter Scheidel, a professor of classics and history at Stanford University. Inequality as a topic generally falls under the categories of political economics and sociology. So, why am I recommending a book on inequality written by a historian? This book is truly fascinating because Scheidel uses historical facts to illustrate the age-old existence of inequality. At the same time, he reinterprets history from a fresh perspective, that of inequality. This new angle is like a thread, stringing together the scattered pieces of information I had into a necklace. This has been my biggest takeaway from reading this book. The conclusion of the book is actually quite simple. Scheidel argues that in any smoothly developing human society, wealth distribution will inevitably become increasingly unequal. It's essentially the Matthew effect. For whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. Matthew 25, verse 29. This trend of increasing inequality can only be temporarily reversed by four things: war, plague, violent revolution, and state collapse. Scheidel calls these four forces the four horsemen of leveling. So, besides these four brutal forces, are there any other more peaceful ways to reduce inequality? For example, democratic systems, progressive taxation, or vigorously promoting universal education? Scheidel gives a definitive answer. No, none of these are effective in truly leveling wealth inequality. Of course, I need to emphasize that Scheidel's discussion is limited to economic inequality. He doesn't delve into other forms of inequality, such as political, gender, or ethnic inequality. Whether his conclusion is entirely correct, let's set that aside for now. I think it's more interesting to follow Professor Scheidel and re-examine human history, with inequality as the central theme. So, when did human inequality begin? And how did it become institutionalized? In this episode, we'll explore these questions. #, the origin of inequality. When we talk about the origins of human inequality, the name that immediately pops into your head is probably Rousseau, because his famous work is Discourse on Inequality. Jean-Jacques Rousseau argued that logically, there are two types of human inequality: natural inequality and social inequality. Natural inequality is simply about physical differences. If I'm stronger than you, I might just take the fruit from your hand by force. That's inequality in a natural state. But is this kind of blatant bullying common in natural conditions? Both Rousseau and Scheidel believe it's not, because humans are too clever. We use tools, we set ambushes. You might be stronger than me, but if you bully me, I can hide behind a tree and knock you out with a brick. Moreover, humans have had long-distance throwing capabilities for 2 million years. This makes bullying even less worthwhile. Besides, picking a fruit isn't that hard. Weighing the risks and benefits, bullying is simply not cost-effective. Therefore, Rousseau's conclusion is, human inequality originates from social factors. Inequality arose after the emergence of surplus and private property. But I don't think Rousseau is entirely correct on this point. For example, imagine I'm Bear 2 and I discover a large hive of honey. I don't tell Bear 1. Every day, I pretend to go to the restroom and secretly sneak out to eat it all by myself. For humans in the hunter-gatherer period, a large hive of honey is a significant find, a considerable asset. I hide it and eat it alone. This is my private property, right? But does this create inequality between me and Bear 1? Not really. You see, having private property doesn't necessarily lead to inequality. Let's continue with Bear 1 and Bear 2 and the hive of honey. But this hive is on a cliff. Bear 1 is too clumsy to climb up. Only I, Bear 2, can reach it. So I say to Bear 1, you wash my underwear every day, and I'll bring honey back for you. Bear 1 agrees. This is a voluntary transaction. At this point, Bear 1 and I are equal. But come next Monday evening, Bear 1 has washed all the underwear and is sitting at the door waiting for me to return with honey. I come back with a jar of honey, looking glum, and say, the sun today made me dizzy. Sing me a little song to relax me first. Then I'll give you the honey. This is bullying, isn't it? because the agreement was only about washing underwear, not singing songs. However, Bear 1 is likely to give in. He hasn't eaten all day and is waiting for this jar of honey. And just like that, inequality arises. Why does Bear 1 yield? Because after our division of labor, I have become more indispensable. I can get honey, he can't. I can wash his underwear, but he can't get honey for me. The story of Bear 1 and Bear 2 tells you one thing. The origin of inequality is not private property, but the social division of labor. Social division of labor leads to interdependence between people, and this interdependence is asymmetrical. This is the true origin of inequality. But Rousseau might argue back that in hunter-gatherer societies, you gather your fruits, I gather mine, where's a division of labor. Besides, there were no refrigerators back then. Eating your fill, picking more fruit is not only useless, but also increases the difficulty of foraging the next day. So everyone gathered just enough to eat. No surplus, no exchange, no division of labor. Therefore, your story only exists in cartoons. Primitive societies were not like that. No division of labor, no dependence, no inequality. However, Scheidel mentions in his book that several archaeological sites of hunter-gatherer tribes dating back over 10,000 years have been discovered along the Pacific coast of Canada. These settlements were quite large, around 100 people. They lived by river estuaries, catching salmon, just like bears in today's wildlife documentaries. In these sites, there's an interesting phenomenon. In large houses, the fish bones are large. In small houses, the fish bones are small. If, as Rousseau said, everyone caught their own fish and ate it themselves, then regardless of house size, fish bones should be a mix of large and small. The fact that large houses have large fish bones and small houses have small fish bones suggests that inequality had already emerged in hunter-gatherer societies. How could inequality arise in hunter-gatherer societies? Two explanations have emerged to address this question. One school of thought is represented by female scholar Anne Apprentice. Her theory is called the scarcity theory. She argues that salmon swim upstream to spawn. So, for those catching fish, where you fish matters a great deal. Those who are strong, like Bob, will monopolize the downstream locations every day, catching big fish and enjoying endless riches. The weaker ones, like Mike, could only go upstream of Bob, catching the small fish left behind by Bob, barely surviving. The other school of thought is represented by male scholar Brian Hayden. His theory is called the feasting theory. He argues that back then, there were no refrigerators. If someone caught too many big fish, they couldn't eat it all themselves and would definitely invite everyone to feast. If you're constantly hosting feasts, people will be indebted to you, and you'll have more say in the community. Inequality arises from this. So you see, when Bob and Mike go fishing, there's no private property, no social division of labor, yet inequality still arises. Therefore, Rousseau's claim that inequality must originate from private property ownership doesn't hold water. However, both hunting and fishing are extremely unstable in terms of harvest. Today, Bob catches a sperm whale, and everyone gets 2 large basins of whale oil for bathing, and everyone calls Bob Big Brother. Tomorrow, Mike hunts a wild boar and brings it back, and everyone calls Mike Big Brother. This is chaos. So, how is this inequality institutionalized and solidified? The institutionalization of inequality. Scheidel's speculation seems to be this. Bob asks everyone, aren't you all tired of eating grilled fish every day? Do you want to try something different? The folks all say yes, they do. Bob then says, over in the forest, about 6 miles away, there's Wong Village. They don't have fish, but they have goats and wheat. Let's trade some dried fish for some, and I'll make mutton pie for everyone. How about that? Everyone says yes, yes, yes. And just like that, for the sake of mutton pies, division of labor arises. Some catch fish, some dry fish, some transport by boat, and some grind wheat. What's the result of this division of labor? Everyone's dependence on Bob. In the example of Bear 1 and Bear 2, Bear 2 uses honey to exchange for Bear 1's underwear washing service. The simple division of labor can lead to Bear 2 bullying Bear 1, but Bear 2 won't go too far. If he does, Bear 1 can stop eating honey and switch to mushrooms. He can still survive without putting up with the abuse. But in Bob's case, the division of labor is more refined. Those who dry fish and those who transport by boat gradually become specialized in drying fish or boating, losing their fishing skills. Their dependence on Bob becomes much deeper. Scheidel gives an example in the book, saying that the Chumash people living along the coast of California for thousands of years have been gathering acorns and fishing, living a peaceful and simple life. But then, someone invented a canoe that could carry a dozen people and sail into the deep sea. With canoes, they could catch bigger fish. Too much fish to eat, they traded fish with inland people for flint, nuts, and cereal grains. With this division of labor, institutional inequality emerged. Then, in agricultural societies with small-scale peasant economies, where every farmer was self-sufficient, how did inequality still arise, and even become more severe than in hunter-gatherer societies? Because compared to foraging, agriculture has two fatal weaknesses. First, hunter-gatherer tribes can move. When the fruit on one tree is gone, they can find another tree. But farmers who cultivate land cannot move. Second, hunter-gatherer tribes eat as much as they gather. If they can't gather enough, they starve. But agriculture is seasonal. Harvested in autumn, eaten throughout the year. Farmers must store enough grain in the fall to last a year. If you can't move and you have 2 sacks of rice at home, you're bound to be targeted. Therefore, agriculture societies have a very strong need for collective defense. This need led to the farmers' dependence on what Max Weber called violent professionals, namely kings and warriors. Let's summarize here. Hunter-gatherer tribes, due to mutually beneficial trade, led to internal division of labor, which fostered inequality. Agriculture. Because farmers are mobile and must store food, the need for defense led to farmers' dependence on kings. These 2 factors are the origins of inequality in human society. So, why did hunter-gatherer tribes trade with each other? If you're tired of eating salmon, you could just leave the stream and go into the forest to pick mushrooms. Why bother drying salmon to trade for mushrooms? Jane Jacobs, the author of The Death and Life of Great American Cities, proposed such an idea. She said that in ancient hunter-gatherer societies, everyone universally desired obsidian. Obsidian is volcanic lava that is cooled and hardened extremely hard. With a strike, it can form a very sharp edge. In an age without metal, this was the best tool for making knives. Some tribes, luckily, lived near volcanoes, with obsidian everywhere, living a life of abundance. Other tribes traveled long distances with local specialties to trade for obsidian. So, what goods could withstand long journeys without spoiling? Only plant seeds and live animals. Thus, tribes with obsidian became trading centers. Jacobs argues that this is the origin of cities. After cities formed, housewives in the cities received plant seeds from various hunter-gatherer tribes. Through accidental selection, they unintentionally completed the work of crossbreeding and cultivation. At the same time, among the various animals sent in, housewives would certainly first kill off the bad-tempered and noisy ones, then kill the docile ones, and finally kill those that could still lay eggs and produce milk. In this way, urban housewives also completed the domestication of animals. Later on, urban housewives would say to hunter-gatherers, "Don't send me civets, bats, and other messy things anymore. I don't want them. I only want pigs and wheat." The hunter-gatherers had no choice but to tearfully take the wheat seeds from the urban housewives and hug the piglets and go home. Jacobs's point is that there was no trade between hunter-gatherer tribes themselves. Trade happened between cities and various hunter-gatherer tribes. It was city dwellers who completed the domestication of animals and plants, and then used trade to force hunter-gatherer tribes to transition to agriculture. In this transformation process, city dwellers imposed a division of labor on hunter-gatherer tribes, and also imposed inequality on them.